All right, so today is Friday, September 30th, and we are in the Teach for the Bay session right now that is entitled Love, Math, and Science, Get Your Teaching Credential at a California public school. So you should be able to see my slides right now. And we went through about 10 minutes of introductions to see who's in the room here with us. And I appreciate those of you who are able to either audio or chat with us in the chat box. We have some future teachers. We have some people that are current teachers and working on other things. And then we have other people that support our teaching community and our future teachers at various institutions. So it's nice to see that we as a community, the Bay Area community, are coming together to try to support our teachers, our students, and our community of learners. So as I mentioned, I showed you this slide a little bit earlier. This is the name of the session. We are recording now. I mentioned this earlier. So my name is Jason Chan, and I am a Teachers Pathways and Recruitment Coordinator at Cal State East Bay. I work primarily with the Teaching Credential program at Cal State East Bay. So I help to try to support our people that are interested in becoming teachers, people who are interested in applying to our credential program at Cal State East Bay. And frankly, just, I try to support people who want to be teachers in general. So if there's people that are either geographically or for whatever reason, it's a better fit at somewhere other than Cal State East Bay, we just try to support the community and try to help people wherever they want to go. So if you'll let me have a few minutes here, I'll share with you my story and how I ended up doing what I'm doing and how it might fit with where you all may be headed. So if you can see in the upper left corner, there's this person with a lab coat and goggles. And so when I was an undergrad, I was on track to become a scientist. So I was an undergrad, I was a bioengineering major. And so I thought that I wanted to work in the lab and I wanted to wear goggles and do like experiments and things like that and do research. And so when I finished as an undergrad, I went on to graduate school, and it was a PhD program. And I found out about a year into it, working on my own thesis project, that I wasn't sure if that was really what I loved. And so I left with a master's degree and I went to work in industry to see if maybe working in the lab in industry was a better fit for me. And long story short, it kind of wasn't. It was kind of the same. And so what happened was I left the lab in industry and I went to get a job with a company called IMS Health as a sales and marketing research guy. And so basically I was on the phones in front of a computer. And so this is kind of me, not a system analyst, but this is me in the upper right corner. I didn't have to wear a suit at that time, but I was on the phones. I was working with clients, but I was still, if you know what IMS Health does, they collect prescription data. So when you go to the pharmacy and you have a prescription dispensed, they collect that information, they process it, they do some statistical projections, and then they sell that data back to like other pharmaceutical companies, the FDA, and Wall Street. So that was what I was doing. I was now in front of a computer away from the lab bench. And so I seemed to enjoy that a little bit more. And so I did that for a while. And then I went to go get my MBA, my business degree. And while I was doing that, I connected up with a previous client, and he was like, hey, you want to work here, part-time while you're going to school? And so I did that. And then when I finished my MBA, then I stayed on with them and I worked full-time in their team. And so I was still working at a computer doing kind of, it was a pharmaceutical company. It was Allergan. So if any of you know Allergan, that is Botox is one of the big products now. At the time, they were big in eye care and skincare. But I was working part-time at Allergan. Then I hooked on and stayed on full-time after I finished my MBA. So about a year or so into it, my boss, my team director, he was a sales guy at heart, but he was also taking this role at the office to try to expand his experience as well. And so he was like, hey, he got a job as an outside sales director. And so he was managing, he had a team of salespeople covering, I think, California or the Pacific Coast or whatever it was. And he's like, hey, Jason, why don't you spend some time being a salesperson, getting some experience in sales? And I was like, are you serious? Are you kidding? I am a scientist. I'm now working in the at a cubicle now, which seems to be a fit for me. I'm not a salesperson. Like, to me, that seemed like being a car salesperson, or that just wasn't me. But he was like, do it for like 2 or 3 years. It'll be good experience. You can put on your resume, and then you don't have to do it anymore. You can go back in house if you want. I was like, how about a year and a half or two? And so I ended up agreeing to do it. And in the beginning, it was kind of rough because this is me. I wasn't wearing a bow tie, but I would now have to wear a suit and a tie, and I'm working out of my car. And this is before like GPS and phone maps everywhere and Waze. And so like I have to map out my path the night before and use sometimes like physical paper maps. And I'm getting lost and I'm making U-turns. And the first couple of weeks I get to an office, they're like, you need to make an appointment, or this doctor doesn't see reps. And I'm kind of like, this sucks. I don't enjoy this. Why am I doing this? I'm a scientist, or, I'm pretty good working at a computer at a cubicle, but I stuck with it. And I ended up becoming a field trainer. And then I ended up becoming a district sales manager. So now this is me in the bottom left corner, now managing a team of 10 to 12 people in, pharmaceuticals still. So I still have my connection to biotech and pharma, but I'm not in the lab bench anymore doing experiments. And now I'm sort of in field sales. And my last corporate job was as a commercial operations director at a company called StemSite down in Southern California that does like cord blood collection and stem cell research. So that was my last corporate job in this bottom left corner, where now I'm managing people and still kind of in the biotech and pharma industry. And after about a year of working at StemSite, I got laid off. And so when I got laid off, my wife and I were trying to decide, what should we do? We have a couple of young daughters at the time. And I ended up about 7 years ago connecting with Los Medanos College, which, if you see my background, that's a community college here in the Bay Area. And I teach chemistry at Los Medanos part-time. So I teach one intro chemistry class each semester. And then about 3 years ago, I got hooked up with Cal State East Bay, which is why we're here together today. And I help recruit for the teaching credential program. And so now my life is sort of in the left two boxes, where at Los Medanos, I teach chemistry and we do labs. And so now I'm back in the lab, not doing it myself, but showing the students how to do the labs. But I'm also sort of leading a team, or in this case, a classroom of students. And my life has kind of come back full circle. So the point of me kind of sharing this story with you and my path is, number one, so you get to know a little bit about, who's talking with you. And number two, one of the things I always kind of share or encourage, and I share this with my students at Los Medanos, is you never know where life is going to lead you. And try to keep your eyes and ears open for different opportunities, because if you asked me or told me when I was an undergrad whether I would be teaching at a community college or recruiting for Cal State East Bay or some of the other stuff that I do now, I would have said, no, I'm going to be a scientist and that's what I'm going to do. But now that you kind of know where my path has taken me, it's kind of taken me a lot of different places. And part of the reason was because I was open to trying different things, and I was also connected with good people. But the moral of my story that I'm trying to share is, you never know where life might lead you. Keep your options open, keep your eyes and ears open. You might try something that you enjoy that maybe is not something you thought of. Because the other thing that I kind of try to encourage people to do is find what you're passionate about. If you can find what you're passionate about, and you can also align yourself to make a living doing it, make some income from it, then it's almost like it's not a job. It's something that, will make you income, but it's something that you enjoy as well. So that's a little bit about me. Thanks for letting me share a little bit about myself. Now that we've kind of gone into that a little bit, here is the agenda for kind of the rest of the time. And so we're going to talk about why teach, right? And this is part of the Teach for the Bay conference. And so we sort of have an audience here who's already interested in teaching. But if you have thought about it, or if you haven't thought about it, maybe you'll hear some things that other people might share about why they're interested in this area. And then the second bullet point you see on the screen there is, what kind of teaching credential do I need to get? when we were introducing ourselves earlier, we have people that, you know, regardless of the topic, the title of this session, we have people that are on different paths, either, you know, high school, middle school teacher, elementary school teacher. We have some, you know, preschool, maybe early childhood. So we'll talk about what kind of teaching credential do I need to get. And then the third bullet you see there is why choose East Bay if that's a good fit for you to get your credential. And then the last thing, with time permitting, we'll open it back up to questions and open discussion. So that's kind of the plan for today. So my next slide here is the why teach. So this is where we try to be a little more interactive. So if you can throw it in the chat box, or if you want to unmute, you're welcome to. But why are you here? Why do you potentially want to be a teacher? Or, you know, why do you work with people that want to be teachers? Or why do you believe in the mission? Why teach? So I'll give you all, if you're typing in the chat box, I'll give you all a little bit to do that. Jordan, go ahead. Nope, you're still muted. I think you're starting to talk. There you go.
So my middle school after school program was very understaffed for like 4 or 5 months. So when I was an 8th grader, they gave a few of the like trustworthy 8th graders, like we were in charge of like a homework room, like so we got the walkie, and we would get to help the 6th graders with homework.
Nice.
And then the staff had just like at the end of the time, and like every week they would just tell us that we're doing a really good job, and they pulled a few of us aside and said that like this might be something that you would be like really good at.
Nice. Cool. And you, so you had an experience with middle school program. I saw in the chat box, you also
and my
said
high school program too. So, and now I'm actually doing like that in elementary school in SF.
Nice. So you've covered all the young kids, the middle school, and the high schoolers.
Well, high school, I was doing it while I was in high school.
Oh, gotcha.
And middle school. It was when
Okay.
I was doing it in middle school. So, but I like it.
Okay. Well, what do you like about it? And others can, if you can't talk to us like out loud, you're welcome to throw it in the chat. What do you like about teaching, or why do you think you're looking at being a teacher?
Because we're like helping the students of tomorrow, like the adults of like, it's only like 12 or 13 years till they're like doing the same thing as us. So and I had some really good teachers as well, so I really like that.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for sharing, for sure. Anybody else want to share why they're looking at teaching, or why they might want to become a teacher? Don't be shy. So I'll kind of piggyback on what Jordan was saying. So a lot of our applicants and a lot of our people that enter our program at Cal State East Bay will tell us that they were inspired by a teacher. They had a really good teacher that made them want to look at teaching. And sometimes on the flip side, they actually would say, I had a really challenging experience, or I had a not so good teacher in this subject, and I want to do better for students. And that's part of the reason that I'm teaching, or I'm looking at teaching. So, all right. So we'll keep going. So what Jordan mentioned is definitely valid, appropriate. So like Jordan was saying, and I'm sure a lot of others of you who are listening in, so people that enjoy working with students, people that want to make a difference in their community, those are a couple of things that Jordan mentioned. We oftentimes talk about job security. So we talk about this huge shortage of teachers in general, especially, you know, math and science and other subjects of teaching. So there's a huge need for teachers, not only locally or in the state, but nationwide. And so if, you know, you start out as a teacher here in the Bay Area and you want to move somewhere else in the state, you probably can find a job at teaching at another district or another school if your life is leading you to a different place where you're going to live. And, you know, even if you want to, you know, leave California and go somewhere else, there's maybe sometimes some stuff that you need to do to make sure you're properly credentialed or qualified in the other state, but there's definitely a need for teachers across the country as well. And so if your life is going to lead you outside of California and you want to continue being a teacher, there's a lot of opportunity with being a teacher, you know, pretty much anywhere in the United States. And the last point that I'll throw out that nobody mentioned, but sometimes people will mention this, is the work schedule. When my daughter, I think, so I have a couple middle schoolers. I have two daughters, so I'm a girl dad. So I have a seventh grader and a sixth grader. And so when one of my kids was in third grade, her teacher was kind of, I think, newer to teaching. And so I asked her, I started this position at East Bay, and I asked her, like, you know, why did you decide to become a teacher? And at the time she had a couple of young kids. She had a almost newborn, and she had like a, I think, almost preschooler, maybe kindergartner. And she said that part of the reason was because it matched her kids' schedules. And so she could drop off her kids and pick up her kids after they get off school, because her school day would, I think it's like 8:30 to 2:30 or 3 o'clock. And so she had some time flexibility to be able to drop off and pick up her kids. And then the school year runs from around here, like August to beginning of June. And so when her kids are off school in the summer, then she can also be off school if she chooses to be, or she can do other things in the summer if she wants to be as well. So those are a few reasons that people have shared with me that they're, you know, that they've chosen the path to teaching. We've also surveyed people in our classes, and they echo some of these things as well. This is a little graphic that that I kind of pulled from somewhere that I thought was kind of cool and kind of inspiring. So we talk about holidays. So, you know, if you're on a school schedule with your kids, if you have kids, then you're kind of on the same school schedule as well. We'll talk a little bit about salary in a little bit. Pensions, if you're in California, the teachers, once they accrue enough time, are eligible for CalSTRS. And so that is a pension type program for teachers. And we talk about the challenging and rewarding, inspiring young minds, and shaping people's futures and things like that. Here's another graphic that I like that is a slightly different graphic, but it's kind of related. So I call out some of these bubbles that say 85% of people that surveyed and asked why do they want to become why did they become a teacher, say to make a difference in the lives of children. 74% over on the right side say to share their love of learning and teaching. And then on the bottom left, 71% say to help students reach their full potential. And so when I surveyed our own candidates, some of our math and science candidates in our teaching credential program, the two biggest things that came out when I asked them why they chose teaching was they like working with students and they want to give back to their local communities. And so some of these call outs that you can see here in this graphic, as well as what we saw in the previous one, echo some of the things that we heard from our own students in our classrooms in the teaching credential program. Okay. So let me ask you all here in the bottom right. So why might someone not want to teach, or what might give somebody some apprehension to go into teaching? Or you all are gung-ho and you're like totally on board, all good with it? Yeah, Hannah, go for it. Oh, you're still on mute, I think. There you go.
So some reasons I've heard from friends or peers is that teachers aren't as valued here than in like Europe or Asia. So there's
Mhm,
like a hesitancy and also um, not as much support
mhm.
for teachers here.
Okay. So when you say support, if I can pick on you for just a second, when you say support, what kind of support are they talking about, or are you referring to?
So some support is like funding like materials for students to be able
Mhm,
to succeed in the class, as
right.
well as just seeing all the inequalities that are in the classroom and not like kind of, well, feeling overwhelmed
Mhm,
at times.
gotcha. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. So let me kind of break that apart a little bit. So talking about feeling overwhelmed, especially in the first few years, right? So anytime you start something new, myself included, the beginning is tough. So we're never going to say that it's easy, especially for an early stage teacher, somebody just finishing up our teaching credential program. The first few years are probably going to be very challenging because you're developing curriculum, you're trying to figure out how you want to run your classroom. Um, the level of support that people get from their schools or their school districts is, let me just say it varies. And so you may find schools or districts that you maybe don't get as much support, or you may find other schools or districts maybe later in your career, or if you talk to some of your teacher peers that maybe offer a little bit more support. But it can vary. That's a fair point. Jordan was putting in here, yeah, the first few years are some of the most special. So yeah, speaking of um, my experience at Los Medanos, without taking you through the whole thing, I got hired like 2 days before the first day of class when I first got hired. And so I told the students that like on my first day of class is like, hey, I'm here and I'm the instructor and I'm here to work with you this year. But I literally got hired like 2 days ago. And so we kind of learned together. And, this is true of in the early stages, but, even throughout your career, we learn a lot from our students as well. So constantly learning. So cool. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to tackle one that maybe is the elephant in the room that maybe you all are okay with, or you all are educated with. But a lot of times when I talk to people that are in the general public, or when they, if they've kind of been told or think that if I become a teacher, I'm going to like barely be able to make a living, or I'm going to be, poverty level, or, whatever. So let me first acknowledge that everybody has a different kind of lifestyle. And so, my lifestyle is different than, many of yours, and maybe some of the people around you or in your neighborhood or your family or whatever. So everybody's kind of standard of living or expenses or responsibilities or obligations are different. So I don't want to make light of that. But what I want to share with you is we work very, very closely with Oakland Unified. And so I pulled this off of their webpage somewhat recently. And for somebody that is a brand new teacher, and so if you're not familiar with it, the way that teachers get compensated in the majority of districts is through what's called a step and column, kind of it's a grid. And I forget which one is which, but this one of them, let's call it the step, is based on how many years of teaching experience do you have. And then the other one, the column, is how many post baccalaureate. So once you finish your 4-year degree, how many graduate credits do you have that you've completed? And so if you envision this as a grid, and there literally is a grid like on the Oakland Unified website and other websites, you look at this grid and you figure out, where are you on the step? How many years of experience do you have? Where are you on the column? How many graduate credits do you have? And for somebody that, if you can see on my screen, step 1, column 2, which a lot our Cal State East Bay graduates are coming out with no experience, they can start in the low 50s. Okay, so this is a brand new teacher, like first job potentially, or no teaching experience. A mid career teacher can make in the 80s, and I have people that I know who are teachers that make 6 figures. And so the belief out there that you're going to be poverty level may not necessarily be all that accurate. That being said, the point that Hannah made about, lack of funding for resources or some of the initiatives that the teachers want to do, there is out of pocket that comes, that a lot of teachers have to find themselves having to do. And you hear in the general public about, our teachers are not supported enough, and, they should be one of the highest paid professions that are around. So there's a lot of public sentiment for that. But if you actually look at salary scales, this is what a brand new teacher would make in Oakland Unified. Okay. And so also, like we mentioned, teachers are eligible for CalSTRS. And so there are very few pension programs out there that contribute towards people's retirements. But the CalSTRS, teachers who accrue enough service time is what it's called, are eligible for CalSTRS and are eligible for pension. So that is also something that's nice for teachers as well as these benefits that comes from the Oakland Unified website. And keep in mind that, again, like we mentioned, my kids go to school from August to June. And so that's about 10 months. And this is what it says, again, on the Oakland Unified website, is this salary is for 186 days per year, which is 10 months, 6 hours per day. That's not to say that you're going to not spend more than 6 hours a day doing prep time, especially in the beginning. But this is what it says on the Oakland website, Oakland Unified website. Okay. So what would that salary be for those of us that have a pension for math, or that, can do this pretty quickly? What would that salary be if it's annualized to 12 months? Because if this is for 10 months, then in the summer, you can do whatever you want to do, including either go on vacation and do, not have to work, or you can, do some other work and make money other ways, through, summer school or camp or coaching, or, whatever you want to do. So if it's about 52,000 for, let's call it 10 months, what would that be annualized? I'll give you maybe a little bit to try to do a quick calculation. You didn't know that you're actually going to have to do math today, did you? Anybody come up with a number? Or do you want to throw out a guess? Feel free to throw out a guess. That's pretty close, Stephen, in the chat, at least from the numbers I used. So anybody else want to throw anything else in the chat or out loud? So from the calculation, we're getting closer. So from the calculation that I did, let me just double check it, because I try to do math on the fly when I'm in class too, and sometimes I screw it up. So if I do 52,000 and I make that monthly for 10 months, and then I multiply that by 12, I get about 62,400. Okay. So if this position was a full year, 12-month position, and you annualize that, a brand new teacher just coming out of the Credential program with no previous teaching experience would be making the equivalent of 62,400 as a brand new teacher. Okay. And so again, not to say that they make what's in the Oakland Unified website for Oakland, but in the summer they can either choose to work and make additional income, or they can, they have the flexibility to do other things too, go on vacation, do some, passion projects, whatever you want to do. So there's some flexibility in whatever you want to do for the summer, including earn more if you want to. Okay. All right. So any questions before I move on to what kind of teacher credential do I need to get? Questions, comments, or anything that popped up? All right, I'll keep an eye on the chat box. But so on the subject of what kind of teaching credential do I need to get? So we heard from people who are working towards becoming elementary school teachers. We have people here who have worked with middle schoolers or worked with high schoolers, and maybe want to teach in that setting. So in the first line here, if you can see it, single subject or multiple subject, what's the difference? So a lot of people, when I meet them and they express interest in teaching for the first time, or they haven't really looked too much into it, I'll ask them, what grade level or what age of students do you want to work with? And they're like, well, I'm not quite sure yet. Maybe elementary school, maybe high school. And so I kind of try to stop them there, and I kind of explain to them that there's sort of a difference, and you kind of have to decide one or the other, at least when you get started. So a single subject credential allows you to teach a specific subject in a high school or middle school setting. Because when the students are in high school and middle school, they're going from room to room, class to class, and they're going to different classrooms for different subjects. And so you as the teacher have a specialization in a specific subject. And so if you're going to teach in middle school and high school, you need to get a single subject credential. Okay. If you want to teach in the elementary school setting, now your students, for the most part, stay in your classroom, and you have to teach them multiple subjects. And so if you want to become an elementary school teacher, you need to get a multiple subject credential, which gives you exposure to, multiple subjects, including English and math and, social studies and, other subjects as well. And so if you are, destined to teach in a public school, you need to, when you apply for our credential program, you need to decide whether you want to enter the multiple subject credential program or the single subject credential program. Okay. On those next two questions there, when do I need to decide, and what if I change my mind later? So when do I need to decide is when you start the credential program, or better yet, when you apply, you should have decided which path you want to take. Okay, because there is slightly different curriculum and there's a slightly different pathway if somebody's going to go the multiple subject route versus the single subject route. But that being said, what if I change my mind later? So if you change your mind later, or you want to add things to your original credential, we just did a speaker meeting series last week. I think it was last week. And this guest teacher speakers that we had on did exactly that. And so you may start with a multiple subject credential, but you can always add a single subject credential authorization, is what it's called, later on. Or if you start as, for example, I teach chemistry. So let's say I had a single subject credential in chemistry. And let's say I also really enjoy PE. If I wanted to add an authorization for PE, there's some things that I need to do, but I don't have to go through the whole credential program all over again, but I could always add an authorization to whatever I started out with. Okay. There's a couple comments in the chat box, so let me address those. So in some SFUSD schools, fifth graders switch between two classes. So that's a good point. My kids in our school, local school here, also had a science specialist. And so they went to a different classroom for their science classes as well. Michelle has a question. Do you need a credential to teach at community college? So you do not. So for the community colleges, I'll answer the question, but it's a little bit outside the scope. So we can talk about that later more if you want. But to teach at a community college, the minimum requirement is to have a master's degree in whatever subject you want to teach. So my master's degree is in bioengineering. And I had a concentration or emphasis in kind of chemistry and biochemistry. And so that's how I ended up being able to teach chemistry at the community college. So the minimum requirement is a master's degree in whatever subject you want to teach. That being said, a lot of my full-time faculty colleagues at the community colleges, they typically have PhDs. And so if that's something that you want to pursue, master's degree is minimum. If that's something you want to pursue as a full-time thing, you might want to look at completing your PhD degree. Okay. So to summarize this slide, decide whether you want to go into a single subject credential or a multiple subject credential program. The difference is either you're teaching in elementary school or you're teaching in middle or high school for a single subject. And you need to decide before, or at least when you start the credential program. And if you change your mind later, or if you want to add things on, that's not a huge deal. You don't need to do the whole credential program all over again. You can always add an authorization or switch your subject. My brother-in-law is a teacher. He was one of the guest speakers last week. He started with the elementary school multiple subject credential. he got an authorization to teach math, single subject. So he taught math in the middle school. And now he teaches engineering, gardening, robotics, and leadership. And he's been teaching for quite a while, so he has a little bit of tenure, but he's not teaching elementary school anymore, and he doesn't teach math anymore. So he's kind of, changed his path a little bit as well. Okay. So let's keep going. So why choose Cal State East Bay? For those of you that East Bay might be a good fit, I'll just kind of mention a few things here. So we have what's called a cohort program that a lot of our candidates enjoy. What that means is that if we admit, let's say 200 candidates in a given year, we'll break them out into classes of like 30, cohorts of 30 students. And so pretty much all of the classes that they take are going to be in the same cohort of 30 students. And a lot of our candidates like this format because rather than going from one class and then, next class, it's like 30 brand new faces. If it's the same 30 students, like from class to class, you can get to know people a lot faster and maybe develop some deeper relationships and, long lasting even beyond the credential program. A lot of our people value the cohort model. We also have very good value tuition wise for Cal State East Bay. So at Cal State East Bay, at least right now, it's a 3-semester program, and right now tuition is about $4,000 each semester. So that is $12,000 for the year. I haven't done a rigorous audit and surveyed every other program in the area, but I know that other programs are more than that, 12,000. And down farther, you can see it's 3 semesters, 1 year. So our program at Cal State East Bay is 1 year. $12,000 tuition. I know other programs locally that are 2 years, maybe sometimes 3 years. And I've heard from other people that may have looked into it, that tuition may run into the 25, 30,000 or more range. Okay, so it's good value. We have very high quality faculty and instruction. East Bay is local, close to home for a lot of people. And we talked about part of the reason that people want to pursue teaching is because they want to give back to their communities. So that's a valuable thing. And we do have a fully online program available. It's not available for math and science, and it's not available for the multiple subject credential program either. But for certain single subject subjects, there is a fully online program option as well. Okay. And just really quick, so this is kind of the main thing I'll talk about for math and science. We also have other programs that are specific to math and science teachers. If you know somebody or if you are looking into math and science, there's financial resources that are available that are specifically geared towards math and science teachers as well. So my second to last main slide here, if you are thinking of applying to Cal State East Bay for the teaching credential program, our program, everybody starts in summer semester. So the next program that will be opening is in summer of 2023. So this coming summer, that starts in June. And then that group will be finished in spring of 2024. Okay. Applications open in November. So that's right around the corner. Tomorrow is October. So it's a month and a day away. We have a first priority deadline in February, I believe, a second priority deadline in March, but our final application deadline is in April. So applications open in November. The soonest you can submit is in February. The final deadline is in April, and our program starts for everyone in June. Okay, so this is the timeline of when somebody, if they want to apply for the upcoming program year, would be following. I have the link here for the single subject program with information and application requirements and things like that. We also have my ed services team hosts information sessions that if you're interested, I can give you the link for. And some of you that are on my mailing list, I put that link into the emails that I send out. So the ed services team who actually processes and evaluates the applications run these information sessions to try to help people navigate the application process. And the note down here on the bottom says items that usually take a little bit more time if you look at that link and look at the application requirements are the subject matter competency, which can be fulfilled either by CSETs or more recently within the last couple of years, if you have a undergraduate or graduate major in the subject that you want to teach, your subject matter competency is satisfied. If you want to teach in a subject that is different from your undergraduate or graduate major, then you have to satisfy subject matter competency. And oftentimes that's through the CSET exams. So those sometimes take a little bit of time to work on, as well as early field experience, which is basically 45 hours that needs to be done working with students. 15 of those hours needs to be done within the last 2 years in a California public school setting. And the reasoning for that, or the logic for that, is we want to make sure that you know what you're getting into before applying, before entering our program, that you know what grade you like and that teaching is for you. Because the last thing that we would want you to do is go through our program, spend your time, your energy, and your financial resources going through the 1-year program, and then decide, I don't want to be a teacher. Okay, so that's part of the reason that the early field experience requirement is in place. That's 45 hours total. 15 hours needs to be within a California public school within the last 2 years. And then the 45 hours overall needs to be within the last 3 years. So somewhat recent. Okay. So the last kind of slide I want to leave you with here is a few quotes. One's from Henry Ford. So whether you think that you can or you think that you can't, you're usually right. Okay, so this applies to us as future teachers and professionals, as well as our students. Okay, and I share this quote with some of my students that I teach. Is a lot of times it starts with us. And so if we think we can do it, then that's great. But if we think we can't do it, then sometimes we just will get in our own way. And so part of the reason that I teach is I like to try to inspire people to try to do the best they can. And if they believe in themselves, then that's kind of oftentimes the first step. The second one here says they may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Okay. So when I was going to college, I had to take all the math classes like calculus and, differential equations and all this other stuff. I don't remember any of that stuff, just to be honest with you. So I probably couldn't do it at this point unless I had to reteach myself. But a lot of times you'll come across teachers that you'll remember that you had a good feeling about them, or they made you, believe in yourself, or they inspired you to do something, right? And so as much as I am and you will be in a position where you're supposed to teach content, there's something to be said about helping people believe in themselves and achieve, whatever they're trying to work towards. And then this last quote from Nelson Mandela: education is the most powerful weapon with which you can change the world, right? And so I won't get into the whole thing right now, but obviously there's a lot of challenges and a lot of things that we deal with right now in our world that could be better. And so if we can do our little piece to help the generations to come, that's part of the reason that I teach. And, a big reason that, like I said, when I surveyed our credential candidates, that they said that they want to be a teacher. And so if you in the room are in here kind of in that same position, we can all do our place to try to make the world a better place. All right. My last slide here. Here's my contact information. I'll put it in the chat box as well. If you want to reach out to me, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to try to type and talk at the same time. So there is my email address in the chat box. And then if you want to schedule, some of you have done this before, but if you want to schedule a Zoom session with me to talk about whatever, whether you want to be a teacher or not, or if you're just trying to figure out what you want to do, if you click on my Calendly link, that'll take you to my calendar and you can schedule time to chat with me, and we can do that over Zoom. But otherwise, hopefully we'll see you at some of our other monthly speaker meetings in the future. I appreciate the time that you spent with me on your Friday here, and hopefully you got a little something out of this. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if there's any last questions or comments, and then I'll turn off the recording if people want to ask questions off recording. Any last questions, comments? We're like 3 minutes to 2 o'clock, so I want to also respect your time. But I appreciate you all that are joining. Hopefully you got something out of it. And if you're taking off, then all the best with your future. Hopefully I get to connect with you, and have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon. But anybody have any questions that want to hang around? Baldwin, I think you might be talking, but we can't hear you. Maybe throw it in the chat, unless throw it in the chat if you can, and I'll try to answer it.
I have a question. This is Anna de Aguila. So if I have students who are interested, is it you who I need to send them, or the other one, credentials at CSU? Which email?
So I'll give my answer, and then if Brenna or somebody from our team our Ed Services team wants to answer. So if they are kind of trying to figure out what they want to do, like if they're kind of exploring, go ahead and send them my way, and I'll try to give them the most direct path. But if it's something specific about their application, or they want to apply to our program, and they it's something specific with their personal situation, their personal application, then that's when I have to kind of lean on Brenna and our educational services team.
Yes, but for a first time, I mean, just to have an idea, because I have many students who have foreign bachelor's degrees, but evaluated by an approved agency, but yes, and they're so different. So okay.
So generally speaking, if somebody has a foreign degree, they have to have their transcripts evaluated by an approved institution. But when it comes to their specific like transcript or their specific package, that's when I turn it over to Brenna and her team.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay,
cool.
I'll be sending them your way.
Yeah,
Thank
for sure.
you very much.
So Hannah, I see your message. I'll hang on. Michelle, thank you for the note. Stephen, what does the credentialing period actually entail? Is it more classes, or does it entail more hands-on experience? So kind of both. If Stephen is still on, but I'll answer for Stephen's still on. Okay. So when you're in the credentialing, when you're in the teaching credential program, part of the requirement to apply and to be admitted is subject matter competency. So let's say you want to be a math teacher. It's sort of assumed, or you have to demonstrate that you're competent in math. So what you actually learn in the credential year classes is you learn how to teach math, not the actual math content. And so you're learning about like classroom management, curriculum development, working with either English as a not first language students, or people with, other challenges with learning. And so in the credential year, in the daytime, in the fall and the spring semester, you're working, doing what's called field work at an assigned middle school or high school or elementary school, depending on what you want to do. And then in the evenings, like 2 to 3 evenings per week, you're taking your Cal State East Bay classes that are what I was mentioning about, like learning different topics on how to teach, including your subject, learning how to teach that. So and it is hands-on experience. Does the hands-on experience come before, during, or after? So it's during. And also from the early field experience that I was mentioning, the 45 hours that you need to do, you need to have some experience, or at least some exposure to the environment before applying and being admitted to the program. But really getting into the classroom and actually, helping develop a lesson plan. If you're a student teacher, you would be working with like what's called a cooperating teacher, who is a teacher who has been teaching and is experienced. You would potentially be lesson planning and maybe doing a lesson, like presenting a lesson with them in their classroom as well. Baldwin, what is the time limit for passing the CSET for Mandarin to apply? So for subject matter competency, that needs to be ideally satisfied before you apply, before you are admitted to the program. So like if our program starts in June, ideally you have your CSET completed for Mandarin, for example, for Baldwin, before you start in June. It definitely needs to be done before you're placed in any classroom. And the CSETs, once you take them and pass them, a passing score is good for 10 years. And so if you take it and pass it and you decide, I don't want to apply yet, maybe, next year or the next year or whatever, passing CSET scores are good for 10 years. Okay. Let's see what else. How do you take the CSET? So the CSET is, if you Google it, like CSET with whatever you want to teach. There are testing centers. So if you took the SAT or the ACT or some of these standardized tests that are out there, It's very similar. So you basically find a testing center, you figure out like when you're able to go to that testing center to take whichever CSET you would need to take. And oftentimes the CSET exams that you need to take are more than one. So for example, in math, there's up to 3 CSET exams. To do foundational math, which allows you to teach in the middle school, there's 2. So you need to do number 1 and 2. And then for if you want to teach full math, like all levels of math, then you need to take the 3rd one as well. So sometimes there's more than one CSET you need to take for a specific subject. All right. Any other? I think that was the last question I saw in the chat box. Anybody else that wants to throw anything else out loud? Otherwise, I'll stop the recording and then I'll answer any other questions that people might have. All right. Well, thank you for joining. Good to see you all and have a good weekend. And again, feel free to reach out and I look forward to connecting with a lot of you with wherever you're headed in your journey. So thanks for joining. Have a good weekend and I'll talk with a lot of you soon.